form. So let's start with what's a digital platform. A couple of years ago, we cooked up this definition. Digital platform is a product. It's composed of people, it's composed of processes, it's composed of tooling. It helps enable other teams, specifically digital service teams, to rapidly develop, iterate, and operate digital services at scale. It's a bit of a wordy thing, but I think the key things there are product, people, operating at scale. If you go and look at team topologies, they'll go and say there's 4 fundamental team topologies. The first one you've got is a streamlined team. They're aligned to a flow of work, typically within a segment of business domain. You've got an enabling team. They will go and help a streamlined team to overcome obstacles. They'll also detect some missing capabilities in your organization. You've got a complicated subsystem team. That's where significant expertise is always needed. And a platform team is actually a grouping of all the other team types, but they have to provide an compelling internal product to accelerate delivery for the streamlined teams. So we get a bit of context there. In a platform team, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but we're helping other people. To me, the simplest definition is you're bundling the environment of people, of processes and tooling around the people that are building digital services, and you make sure that little bundle is a really compelling internal product. People want to go and use it. You want to make sure that that product is really consistent, and you want to make sure that product is encouraging practices and principles that either work for your context, or if you identify certain practices and principles that aren't working for your context, they're the ones you want to go and adopt. A digital platform has to provide capabilities and features to its users are other service teams, and they have to also rely on third parties. They have to rely on, if you've got a big organization, you've got change management, they need to be working with change management to take those principles and practices and apply it into the locality, into the business domain of digital services. You're going to have not just capabilities that you offer as a platform team, you're also going to be offering processes. So how do we do audit? How do we do releases? How do we do deploys? How do we manage working software? And because, and I'll mention this a little bit later, because you're dealing with those people, individuals and interactions, you're also going to have to be helping those service teams upskill. You're also going to have to help them, you're going to have to help enable them. You're going to have to provide advice on how to best use the tooling that you've integrated together so they can go and build digital services. One thing a digital platform is not, is it isn't a platform business model, even if that platform business model is digital. So a platform business model is connecting producers and consumers, taking a little bit off the top. Doesn't matter when it's inside an org. Examples of a platform business model, something like the App Store, where they're connecting app creators and people on the street. Sometimes people pay for it, take a bit off the top. Deliveroo, another great example. Restaurants, food, hungry people, take a bit off the top. The fact I'm having to explain some of this part probably means that digital platform isn't a really good name, but we know naming is hard, right? What a digital platform also isn't, is it isn't just the runtime system. It's not Kubernetes, it's not Lambda. Those are both runtime systems, right? You can build digital platforms with them. They're going to go and orchestrate and scale your services in production, and that's awesome, that's amazing, but it's not enough. We've got to have those people and processes around that as well. So now we know a little bit about what a digital platform is and what it isn't. Quick divergence onto why would we start a digital platform? Faster, better, more, right? We want to be able to ship. We want to be able to ship continuously. We want to do that at a bit of a scale. We know that you can template build and deploy pipelines. You can template monitoring and alerting. It's going to reduce your time to launch a service. You've provided that capability to the org. If you remove some of the responsibility from the service teams about the amount of technical stuff they have to go and look after, then they can go and focus on higher value work. Hopefully your customers, hopefully higher business value, whatever that means. And being able, by using those templated build and deploy pipelines, you can go and deploy quickly and cheaply. Being able to deploy quickly and cheaply means you can go and explore alternative business models for a much lower cost. Hopefully, the digital platform will help you produce higher quality work, because you're going to have configuration infrastructure both as codes, make it really easy, there's no guesswork, there's no manual inputting of stuff, it's all there, just all there in the config, right? Hopefully it makes your non-prod as prod-like as possible, but you're going to have to be relying on some of those practices and principles. And by having some automated pipelines, you can have a faster rollback, which means if you do ship out something a bit dodgy, you can roll back really quickly, and then your overall quality stays high, right? Ideally, at the end of this, you get happier, more productive people. It will lower your cognitive load because you remove the responsibility of what they have to look after, what they have to think when building and operating a digital service. And hopefully, it also increases your recruitment options because you've centralized some of your experts, some of your specialists in one platform team that's serving all the rest, build out this lovely capabilities that everyone else can go and use, and then they don't have to go and learn that as much. And you don't have to go and pay for them to go and learn it as well. So that's a little bit about why you would start one. When should you start one? A digital platform product could be an answer when you've got some problems. It might not be the right one. So far, I've found there are 5 questions that are really good at sifting out when you should and shouldn't. There's probably more questions. These might even be the right 5 questions. But these are the 5 I start with. Will it have multi-year funding? Will it serve a homogeneous workload? Will it have a service team to be the first user? Will the team be empowered to make choices? Will they support 5 or more service teams now or in the future? And we'll just explore a little bit more about those questions and tell you a bit about why these are those questions. So will it have multi-year funding? The reason why I'd ask this question is to gauge the intent of the organisation, or at least the people within the organisation. Are they looking to go and improve something once? More of a product, it's not really a product, right? If they don't have multi-year funding, then largely they're probably not going to be building strategic capabilities there, and there's no point having a digital platform and investing that amount of effort and resource and time and people spending their lives on this thing unless you know it's going to go off and be a big thing. If it's a small thing, don't do this. Will they have a homogeneous workload? I had to look up how to say that. But basically is, if you're building digital services, build something around it that works really well for digital services. You know, a crane, for example, really good at picking stuff up, putting stuff down, it's really bad at digging stuff. It's serving really homogeneous workload, right? Will the digital platform have a service team to be the first user? Hopefully you know why this is important. Short version is, if you don't have a user when you're building anything, you're never going to have any feedback loop, you're never going to know if anything's going to be good or bad. You're just making guesses and gut feel, which could work, but I wouldn't rely on it. It's a lot of luck. Will the digital platform team be empowered to make some choices? Hopefully this is true. Hopefully they're able to go off and because they're talking with their users, they can go and use that information to make the right choices rather than the choice coming from on high or from some other part of the organisation that they have no influence over. The last one is, will they support 5 or more service teams now or in the future? This is a really big one. This is largely around figuring out if an organisation is over-investing in a capability that they think what they might really need or they might want. I often get asked why 5. Partly it's based on experience. I've never seen it work well when you've got a small number of teams, but there's also a bit of maths and ratios in there as well, in that when you've got 4 service teams, you've got a platform team, 20% of your effort then is going into building this capability for those other 4 teams. When you've got 5 teams, you're only spending 16% when you're badging a platform team. If an organisation answers no to any of those, that's perfectly fine. It probably means digital platform isn't the right answer for them. They should probably just go and invest directly into the services they already have, help the people building those services get to where they need to be, but you probably don't really need to invest as much into it. However, if it's a yes to all 5, then start doing the right thing, right? Do your discovery, do your inception. Meet Books International. Books International, they sell books to people. It's a really simple business model. And currently they do that by people going into a store, buying a book, walking away with it. They've realized this thing, the internet's turned up, it's kind of useful, and it means that people can actually go and order on an app, and then the book gets shipped to them, and it just turns up the next day. They want to start selling digitally. And they've read all the good literature, and they've went to all the good conferences, and they've got a bunch of knowledge, and they thought, right, let's start with a small team. Let's go and build a first iteration, an MVP, and let's figure out, can we go and sell stuff online? And they do it. They build their MVP, they prove that you can push a button and a book turns up at your door a couple of days later. They know this is a serious strategic capability they need to go and build and invest in because it's a completely different business model they want to go and pursue. They don't know how to grow the engineering effort around that, so they consider maybe let's do a digital platform. So they go and have a look at our 5 questions. Will they have multi-year funding? Well, yeah, they're going to do strategic capability, so they're going to go and invest in this thing. They know this is a product to stay in the game. They need to keep selling books, right? Will it serve a homogeneous workload? Yep. Web-based APIs. Nice, simple, easy. They're not going to go and throw data science notebooks on this thing. They know exactly what they're doing. Will they have a first user? Already got that MVP team, right? They'll be our first user. Will they be empowered to make choices? Now, luckily, Books International, the way they run their stores is they trust the store manager to make the decisions. They're the people with the most amount of information of what's going on. So they also think, right, yeah, platform team, let them make the decisions. They're going to know way better than what we are. We know how to sell books. They know how to build platforms. And will they have 5 more service teams now in the future? They think there are enough strategic differentiators in their e-commerce website, or what their e-commerce website and app and all of that will be. They're going to have at least 5 teams, probably have more like 10. Little areas like payments and accounts, orders, So they start their team. They've got a couple of challenges in front of them when they start their team. They need to choose some user journeys to first build. They need to figure out how to handle all the other user journeys that they haven't built. They need to go and pick some tooling choices, and they probably have a bit of an availability target. What's the minimum we're going to provide to make sure our services will work on top of that? So they start with discovery. Team goes in, they revalidate some of the questions. They find out what existing tooling and processes are already being used, especially by the MVP team. You don't want to change everything overnight, you want to work with people. They identify the potential users, luckily in this case, again, MVP team, let's go with them. They go and have a look at what else is going on in terms of Books International, they gather some context, and they use all of that to start running an inception. If you don't know about inceptions, really great way to de-risk some delivery, spend a little bit of money and time and effort right at the start, figure out what you're actually building, is it the right thing, yes or no, how's it all going to work, which user journeys are we going to go and build first. So they get into the inception and they think, right, well, which user journeys will we go for? Which order are we going to go in? Of the people available in the MVP team, where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses? Where do we need to shore up the support? What can we do first? They go off, they agree all of these things. There's some stuff, however, that they know that they can't support straight away. Ideally, they go off and they build it extensible by default, building blocks. Let them go off what Netflix would call a paved road. Let them go off into the weeds. They can go support extra stuff. And by the time the platform team gets there, they'll either make a choice. Will we support this, will we not? So, we've chosen some user journeys. Books International have a strategy to deal with all the other journeys that are going to happen, but they're not going to build straight away. Need to have a look at tooling. How do we pick tooling? It's really hard. So many options, right? Personally, I would advise Books International to go and use lightweight managed services. Try and make sure you keep your options open in the future as a product team, so you're not spending all of your time looking after Kubernetes cluster. Have someone else look after that for you. There's more than enough stuff out there. Do you even need a container, or can you actually move that responsibility off to a cloud provider? Can you just run in a function so it's just your code and your dependencies? So, picked our tooling choices. We use as much SaaS, as much serverless as we can, right? So we don't have to spend our time working on that, we can do higher value work. Probably need to solve availability though. It's a lot of choices. It's a lot of complexity with different choices, right? You start off with just a single zone in a single region. Do you go multi-zone route to a single region? Do you just go straight multi-region by default? My advice, do single region by default. Amazon.com, they've got a bunch of CDN stuff in front, they've got a bunch of caching servers, but all of it's run out of one region on the East Coast. Everything else built out on top of that, yeah, sure, that's in other places. When you go on and click on Amazon.com, it's the East Coast. They're not worrying too much about geographical problems. If there's an earthquake, there's an earthquake. They'll go into failures or in the backup problems and all that kind of stuff, but sure. If you want to go and do multi-region, I would give some big caveats, and if you're going to do that all the way up front, I would say only do that. Oh, bit of a technical difficulty. Only go and do that if you're that worried about geographical availability. If you need those lower latency to users, CDNs will only get you so far. Putting stuff on the edges of stuff will only get you so far. Or if you need a lower time to restore when you do have a geographical problem. So, we've gone through discovery, we've gone through inception, we've picked some stuff out, started a platform. Yay! There are some pitfalls you can run into when starting a digital platform. So we're going to skip ahead with Books International. We're going to time skip 3 months. First pitfall they run into, it turns out, fail to collaborate with their users. No service team acted as their first user. Their MVP team was there, but Books International, they ended up getting nervous, wanted to rush stuff out the door, make sure stuff was there, scared about their business. Fair enough. But the platform team was told to go off, build a wonderful paradise, land of milk and honey. Didn't end up onboarding them. It's a common thing, it can happen really easily. Well, we'll do that just in the next month, next couple of weeks, yeah, we'll get you on board, no worries. And we'll sort everything out then. How do we solve this platform pitfall? Onboard them as soon as possible. You don't have to have automation in place, barely even have to have any docs in place. Just pair with them, work with them. Start putting this stuff into your tooling, right? By the time you've gathered all of the knowledge you can get with that first service team by manually doing it, you've got a ton of stuff you can then go and turn into automation. And you've got a better sense of what worked and what didn't. Because you've already worked out, oh, we got that stuff in production. Second thing is, make sure you're in the room when those people are complaining. If there are stand-ups, go along to them. It's really key in the early days. You want to build trust. You want to build rapport. You want to make sure that they have all the answers they can, because it will minimize the amount of problems that can go wrong. They're going to say stuff in stand-ups, and they're not going to realize that it's actually really good feedback on the platform, or a potential capability that the platform could go and build for them to make their lives easier, to remove the responsibility, to reduce their cognitive overhead, right? Use all of that to determine what you're going to go and help them with. And then let them know what you're going to go and do. It doesn't have to be 2 years deep, your roadmap in terms of your product. Give them like 6 weeks to a couple of months. And then when you tell them that, make sure you get the yes or no. Do they feel that would be useful? It's only like it's a plan, right? So, we've got past the failure to collaborate with users. Let's skip again, another 3 months. Platform failed to enable some continuous delivery and some operability. Now, if you don't know continuous delivery operability, continuous delivery, let's ship stuff, high quality stuff all the time. Operability, let's make sure we can operate something in production. Both really key things for any software you're going to go and build. Make sure your platform does it from the start. There's 2 ways that this can fail. Technology doesn't support the process, because people are building stuff, they add all stuff into the pipeline, they add more tests, and they kind of not great tests, they slow stuff down, start to atrophy, deployments get a bit more flaky, they start turning into big bang releases, they start taking shortcuts here or there, feature flags, configs get hard-coded into an artifact. People are in a rush, they forget to do any dashboards, any alerting, they have no idea really what's going on in production. It can happen. The other way is the process stops supporting the technology. Again, probably someone's rushing, that's okay. Some of the symptoms of this is services get released in lockstep, and really at that point you're not really deploying individual services, just deploying a monolith with more network calls. Over time, those big bang releases lead to a downward spiral in service quality, and because service quality is going down, people get unhappier and unhappier and unhappier and burn out and they leave. And someone has to come in and deal with all of the mess, right? Another symptom could be this long-lived feature branching. How do we get ourselves out of this? Have a look at what's stopping them shipping to production. Have a look at what's stopping them operating stuff in production. Measure it if you can. If you're not going to measure stuff, you're probably going to again go on gut feel, which could work for a time, but long term probably isn't. And when you're talking to them in those service teams, figure out what's going wrong, figuring out what they're doing that's slowing them down from going to production, figuring out what's making them harder to operate stuff in production. It could be that it's not the technology, right? It could be the process. Maybe you need to go and talk to some people. Maybe you need to go and talk to some stakeholders and tell them that, well, yeah, sure, they'll say, yeah, we'll ship it in a week. Well, maybe the feature is there, but all those non-functional bits that actually make the service functional, they're not actually shipping in a week. So even if they say that, give them more time. And then add what I would call guardrails, but basically it's adding friction in the other part, is to stop them doing things that you consider bad that might not help them operate their services in production, or it might not help them continuously ship. Some really good metrics you can use to help measure some of this stuff. It's like deployment lead time and deployment frequency, how often they're shipping. In terms of the service quality, have a look at mean time to recovery, have a look at availability, and have a look at latency. So, we fixed the user feedback stuff, we fixed the CD and operability stuff. Let's skip ahead and let's see how they're doing. Started running into the people problems. Platform team didn't help people adapt to the change, right? Not everyone has the experience the platform teams have, right? It's a team of specialists, they're helping other teams. But it turns out all the people on the service teams, they came from different backgrounds, experiences, different processes, different technology, different tooling stacks. People, when change happens, aren't always great at adapting to stuff. They revert to what they know, even if it isn't the best thing, right? How do we get ourselves out of this? Helping hands. You're there to help, to advise, to enable, to work with them, help guide them through the change. Be nice. It can take time. It can take a lot longer than you think to embed some of these changes in. Make sure you coach them. Give them advice. Show them what they're doing right and show them what they're doing wrong. And make sure you're doing that in an enablement way, working with them rather than advocacy, which is just talking at them. Talking at them is never going to get anything done. So, user feedback loop done. CDO stuff done. Helping hands now in place. We've done it. Successful internal product. People want to use this, right? We've got a group of people who are going to go and help people, and they've figured it all out, and they've got a nice consistent product that everyone else can go and use to ship digital services. Yay! So now that we've started a digital platform product, next comes the hard part, right? How do we scale it? What happens when you go past 5 teams? What happens when you go past 20? What happens when you go past 30? There are a lot of failures and pitfalls that can happen at this point. One of them is that you can stop being a product. We're all just in the keynote where the product is, continue to be in the game, right? For a project, do one thing and you go off another place. Other aspects of it can be that people end up just seeing the platform as a group of tooling configuration or an SDK. That might be one of the outputs of a platform team. Might be the way some people technology interface with a team. But it isn't a digital platform because it's got those people and the processes and the tooling and all the other parts as well, right? And because all of that success is happening when you're starting off, you're deploying frequently to production. People know what's going on in production, they're able to operate their services, they're like, right, let's do this for all the digital service teams. Turns out when Books International, they're all sort of this team, some of them are on the platform, some of them weren't. They were like, right, let's get everyone onto the platform. It's not always a great fit. And one of the solutions that comes up is like, right, let's do a platform instance for each service team, what could go wrong? They can all go off in their own directions. They be masters of their own destiny. Don't have to work with any central team on this stuff. Starts falling apart sometimes. You can do it right, but sometimes you can start falling apart. Each instance of that platform, each copy of that tooling configuration, that SDK, starts atrophying. As updates are made to the upstream, people aren't following along. So rather than just consuming stuff, now they've got to maintain and look after their own platform instance of this. It gets a bit mad. And the people who are then looking after it now, the service teams, so rather than removing responsibility from the service teams and making their life easier, we've just added a bunch of stuff that they don't really know because they didn't really build it. They don't necessarily have the experience. How do we get out of this? Treat it as a product. It's not an SDK. Merge all of those instances back into one. Stop your platform team having to deal with release and rollout problems and get them focusing back on people problems, user problems. How are people using the platform capabilities and features available? There's one caveat here is that not every service team, not every business domain is going to fit really well with the rest of the workload that's on your digital platform. A really good example of that is payments, because they have to deal with things like PCI. When that happens, you haven't got a homogeneous workload anymore. So go and put that off to a side and give them all the funding and investment they need to try and do something comparable. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be enough for what they need to ship as much as they can and operate their service as well as they can within the other structures and constraints that they have. Okay, so treating it as a product now. Got past that failure. Let's look again. Skip ahead another 3 months. Sustainably scale team structures. Go from 10 service teams to 60. What are you going to do with your platform team? Really bad thing to go and do is to go and create a support team. Because maybe when you're going from 10 to 30, you start thinking, right, we need to get all of those platform capabilities and features shipped, and we need to get it shipped like now. And so, right, you get all your team just becoming a feature factory, getting stuff out of the door. It turns out some of that stuff is low quality. It causes problems. Those problems build up. And you were like, right, well, I can't have my feature team go off and building stuff for the platform capabilities and also looking at this stuff, so let's build a support team, right? And they'll look after some of those issues. We'll have some sort of feedback loop between the two teams, and maybe we'll put people on loan, and in practice it doesn't really work that way, because what you've gone and done here is you've created two separate teams and they no longer have one really good feedback loop with their users. It's two separate teams looking at two separate things. You've got You've got the core team just shipping stuff out, but all of that feedback comes back to the support team. The issues won't go away. They never go away. Usually the support tickets probably get higher and higher and higher. And even though the support team can be the best people on earth, do an amazing job, they won't go away. Because you haven't got that feedback loop in place. How do we get ourselves out of this situation when this happens? How do we get ourselves back into sustainably scaling format, strong feedback loop, right? Merge them back together. But once you've merged them back together, you're still probably thinking, well, like, adding more people to it, we still need to figure out somehow is to keep it shipping, right? Right, so let's split it the same way we'd split teams, right? Look at user features, capabilities, strategic differentiators, split them along that line. Make sure there's individual user feedback loops for each of those teams. So we go something like this, you've just got a platform team and a couple of service teams. We split them. Build and deploy, right? Put something in source control, have it running in production. It's one easy user journey. And then all the rest of it gets handled by a team called enablement, and they look at everything else as well as enablement. Then we add some more teams, and we split again, right? We move stuff out of enablement. We then have telemetry and observability. Everything that's running in production is producing stuff, logs, metrics, signals, indicators that add things about what's happening and how our end users are using those digital services. Again, another user journey for an engineer, for a service team member. So put all of that in one area as well. At a certain scale, turnover starts happening, right? People keep being onboarded and offboarded. Got to go and get that right. It's brutal to the learning curve otherwise. It's brutal to productivity. So, we have a user and service management team, and they look after onboarding people, offboarding people, making sure it's all automated. And then again, that's another user journey with another feedback loop you can go and look at and create a capability team around. Service management as well, making sure it's really easy to spin up a new service. Now, all of the other teams involved are going to have to help with that. They're going to all have to own their own part of their user journey. But again, what happens when a service is decommissioned? Where does it go? Who looks after it? So, I've had a look at sustainably scaling teams. This is where it starts to get really dodgy. failure to do one thing well. People look at the success of a digital platform and think, these guys got it, figured it out. Let's do it elsewhere. Let's get them to do it elsewhere. Let's just have one really big platform that will solve all of our workload needs. It gets dangerous here. Digital platform teams, it turns out you hired a bunch of people who are really good at integrating tooling to build digital services. They're really good at working with digital service teams. It's a really specific domain. It's not going to work really good for things like data science notebooks and data pipelines and all of that, because it was never built for that. How do we get around this? Create a data platform team instead. If you've got another workload that I haven't talked about, I'm only talking about digital and data here, go and create a platform team for them. Same principles, same practices, divide and conquer your workloads separately, make it easier, and then you can maximize the amount of effort you're putting in to creating great user journeys for anyone working with that workload. So, gone through all of the scaling issues. We've gone through what a digital platform is. We've gone through why you'd have one. We've seen how to go and start one. We've seen some of the problems when you go and start one. We've seen some of the problems when you go and scale something. What can you do when you go back to your organization? Maybe you're working in environments like this. If you haven't onboarded a service team and you're a platform team, go and do it now. It doesn't have to be automatic. You don't have to work in everything as code. You don't even have to have all of your tooling integrated and working or anything like that. You can start with just an FAQ doc. How do I build a service? How do I get alerts for that service? How do I get monitoring? How do I go get an access to Git? How do I get access to our cloud provider? That can all just be written down. And then you can use that as a source to build all the automation. So you can just go and onboard them. If they're not deploying regularly, if they're unable to operate their service, go and talk to them. Figure out why. It's probably not going to be technology. If it isn't technology, you need to go and talk to other people. Make sure you're working as helping hands. It is hard to come into a new organization and build stuff. Make sure you're helping them become high performers. It's what you're there for as a platform team. You've got to focus on enabling the others. If you've got multiple instances of your digital platform, create a roadmap to converge them. It's going to be efficiency savings. All of those little patches and bugs and whatever's going to go on, you're never going to see that on a balance sheet anywhere, but in the total cost of ownership for the digital platform instances, it's going to be brutal compared to just having one. And as I said, if you've got a service team with a really specific workload and different constraints like PCI, put them off to the side. Don't put them on your platform. If you've got a separate support team, get rid of it right now. Have a look at other ways to split those capabilities and retain those user feedback loops. If you've got a digital platform that's working for a digital workload, don't use it. Make sure you don't use it for a data workload. Go and spin up a separate team. And that's it. Thank you for listening.